It's been an interesting year for RPGs, and if you are an RPG gamer, you know that some really great titles came out this year. So I thought I'd do this video where I talked about all the games I played this year and how I felt about them. Before we get into the stuff I know most of you are into, RPGs made by Japanese developers, let's do something a little different and start with what was going on the Western Front. Deus Ex Mankind Divided was a game I was personally extremely excited for. Human Revolution was quite possibly my favorite Generation 7 game. The result, however, was an unfortunate mixed bag. On the gameplay front, Mankind Divided is Human Revolution perfected. The old augmentations have been given more of a use. The high jump, something I didn't even pay attention to in Deus Ex 3, became one of the most useful augs for exploration. There are just so many options for specialization this time. The stealth is still great, though I thought some of the new cover switching controls were a little finicky. But the advancement in augs and how they let you, for a lack of a better term, augment how you play was simply great. On the story front, however, this simply was not the Deus Ex that I know. It was too oversimplified, the conflict was too easy, the conspiracy felt low stakes, and it didn't even feel like a conspiracy to begin with. The only exception were the side quests, which I felt were pretty well written. Hopefully Square and Eidos Montreal's higher-ups won't try to pigeonhole the creative team next time. Still, great stealth, great RPG mechanics, great use of abilities made it worth playing. I unfortunately did not get a chance to play The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine, but on all accounts I've heard it improves on all the flaws of the base game, continuing to prove that CD Projekt Red is still a company bent on improving. If any company in the next 15 years is the forerunner when it comes to creating the next perfect game, I say it's them. Alright, moving on to Japan, I'm going to come right out and say it. This was one of the best years for RPGs. Probably one of the best we've had in a long time. Getting right onto it, the biggest surprise of the year was Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE. The game had pretty much everything I looked for in a title. It had a unique personality using its idol and actor agency, as well as a hidden world of people who transform almost Super Sentai style, using knights from an alternate reality that reflects a world similar to that of the first Fire Emblem. It's colorful with its unique designs, slick-looking attacks, and is overflowing with so much charm that I can't take it. The gameplay was surprisingly enjoyable with its great battle system and how it worked with a bunch of smaller, unique mechanics that all kind of come together in this really interesting way. It has its parts crafting to create weapons which give you new attacks and skills to learn. The ability to remake weapons allows you to power them up and can lead to relearning skills while powering up ones you already have. There's masterclassing, which opens up a new line of weapons, which opens up a new line of skills, and it's got a bunch of really great RNG-based attacks that you learn in side quests, which ties together the story elements and the combat in an interesting way that I haven't seen before. The story was deliberately cheesy, which is the best kind of stuffed crust. A game that's over the top and uses tropes, but knows it's using them and is having so much fun with itself. If you think you'd like this game, I highly recommend it. Oh, what was that? There was another game based on Fire Emblem this year. Oh yes, Fire Emblem Fates. Fates is unfortunately in many ways Awakening 2.0. On the bright side, there are some ways where it's not. The Conquest chapter had some fantastic maps and good staggering of different kinds of layouts, which countered Awakening's boring trite maps. There are quite a few mechanics and ideas that really feel like they take Fire Emblem's gameplay to the next level, most of which are in Conquest, but some are even available in Birthright and Revelation. Getting to Birthright, I thought it was pretty boring with its Awakening level maps, and Revelation is a whole other abomination with very questionable layout decisions. But the plot of all the versions is downright awful, in some ways worse than the last game, with a story that makes no sense. If you're playing Conquest, the story plays out in the dumbest way possible. If you're playing Birthright, then the story is a cliché good versus evil story. On top of that, the collection of characters managed to interest me even less than Awakening, though I will admit there are a few that did catch my interest. #Make Fire Emblem Great Again. Odin Sphere came out with its remake, Odin Sphere Leifthrasir. The game was redone to feel more in line with Vanillaware's more faster-paced modern games, and what a gem this was. Each character has their own unique tale while playing into a larger story about the apocalypse of their world. The game's unique feel was bolstered by interesting use of 2D art, color, design, and lore, which made it feel like playing through a very unique kind of fairy tale or fantasy story. The characters all play in extremely unique ways, upgrade in their own ways, and it was a joy unlocking all of their skills and putting together all of these fast-paced combos. It's just plain fun to find more ways to lay waste to enemies. I'm a huge fan of games that combine RPG mechanics with character action fast-paced games, so this was personally perfect for me. And a game like this isn't complete without the boss fights, which put to the test your understanding of combos and skills you've unlocked. If I had to pick out a flaw, it's that I don't think the grunts have been rebalanced properly to deal with how much faster you are in the remake compared to the original. Regardless, this was one of the best games of the year, and if you haven't picked this up and fast-paced games with RPG mechanics are something you like, then please, by all means, pick this up and support Vanillaware. The year was full of monster-catching games. World of Final Fantasy, Yokai Watch 2. But there was one game that truly caught my attention, that amazed me and put a smile on my face the entire time. One that had a great story, great characters, and just great monster-raising mechanics. That's right, you know what I'm talking about. Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. No, I'm being serious. Digimon came out of left field for me. Its evolution system was easy to learn and it was very fun. Its mechanics made it possible to turn any Digimon into the fullest and best of its kind through smart de-evolution and re-evolution. It's possible for anyone to obtain every monster in the game with enough time and effort. The story, while not groundbreaking, has some interesting characters and uses its ideas well. I'm a huge fan of games that dive into digital worlds like Tron and Digimon, so this was great for me. I personally love the look of the game, even if its graphics aren't high fidelity. It reminded me a lot of the movie Summer Wars. And then there's the soundtrack by Masafumi Takada of Danganronpa fame. I think what made this game so fun to play was convenience. The islands you could open up that allowed you to raise Digimon and even shape their stats or search for items was great and so useful. And even though you could only use 3 Digimon in battle at a time, you could carry up to 11 with you with some caveats, which all allowed for easy raising. It all made the game flow nicely. The one flaw? The awful, lazy localization. I understand why Bandai Namco is doing the lazy Hong Kong thing with games like Super Robot Wars, but Digimon? Come on Bandai, I think your loyal Digimon fans deserve better than this. Dragon Quest VII for the PS1 had its remake for the 3DS finally released this year. As someone who feels the PS1 version is a masterpiece and is probably my favorite RPG ever, what did I think of the remake? It's alright. I highly recommend it for new players and for people who don't think they could ever play the PS1 version, don't get me wrong. But for me it's alright, and I do have my reasons. First off, there are clear improvements. I like that each person wears their vocation, I love the way battles look, and I love how more convenient and easy to play the game is. But I've got some issues with it. It's too easy, some of the dialogue in the game has been removed, battle chat has been removed entirely, and that was one of my favorite parts of Dragon Quest VII. The art style is kind of reused from Dragon Quest IX, and while that works really great for Dragon Quest IX, it doesn't really fit for this game, which has more of a foreboding feeling. The hybrid skill system, rather than being fixed, has been removed entirely. Again, this game is completely accessible for newcomers, and if you want to play this game, a game that I think is excellent, and you can't get your hands on the PS1 version or you know you won't enjoy it because you think it's dated, then again, play this game. The old DQ7 was a game very focused on veteran Dragon Quest players. That's actually the reason why I like it. I think focused games are the ones that are allowed to work at their full potential. The more you generalize the game for mass appeal, it appeals to more people, but on a more superficial level. Still, I think a world where this game exists is a better one than one where it does not. Hopefully one day they'll do a remake of Dragon Quest VII that takes the best of both versions of the game. But here's a game I'm totally positive on. Dragon Quest Builders. Enix, more of this, please. Some would describe this as Minecraft as a story, but I think the mechanics come together to create something more than that. To me, it's about contextualization. I like how the stories give context to what you are creating and why you're creating it. It becomes more about building the kind of city that thrives in the current environment you have been given, and forming the kinds of places that are best for what you're going through. What this does is that it creates an experience where you feel like a builder in that world, attempting to use your creations to overcome the hostility of this alternative universe to Dragon Quest I. So there were 2 Mario RPGs that came out this year. Well, one by Nintendo's own admission isn't really an RPG. The one I played was Mario & Luigi Paper Jam, and I thought it was a very enjoyable game. Does it reach the heights of Bowser's Inside Story? No. Does it change up the Mario & Luigi games in a way that made the first 4 all feel different? No. But is it fun? Yes. While there are no actual Paper Mario mechanics in the game, I like what they did with Paper Mario. They made him a very unique character to play as. He made every battle extremely fun. I love how his entire RPG presence is that he's this super glass cannon. I thought the script was funny and entertaining, perhaps funnier than previous games. I think the game got a bit long and towards the end it gets a little bland, but overall I enjoyed it and there were some parts that I absolutely loved. Oh, and I guess I should mention Pokemon Sun and Moon. I know some people might be surprised by this, but it was a mixed bag for me. I know everyone plays Pokemon in a different way, so not everyone is going to have the same opinion. But for me, one of the most important aspects is catching and discovering new Pokemon, and seeing how they play differently and how they could play into a team. They royally messed this up. Grass Patches usually had very few Pokemon, most of them being old. Most of them from Gen 1 or Gen 6. And to me, I like the experience of finding a new Pokemon, seeing its stats, and seeing how it can play into an overall strategy. The new Pokemon, however, are made extremely rare. This proved frustrating and just not fun at times. The story, while it had some good ideas and I thought Lily was great like everyone else, also felt unpolished and simply unresolved in certain areas. There was some theming, but it felt paper thin to me. Certain groups and certain characters don't even get a proper resolution or get an extremely rushed one. And ultimately the entire game's focus is on one character and doesn't really spread that love. And ultimately the game puts its focus on just one character. And while that one character is good, to have them take away the focus from everything else halfway through the game is disappointing. On the bright side, HMs are gone, I love doing away with gyms, the new Pokemon, when you do catch them, and the Alolan forms are excellent, and a lot of the cosmetic improvements are nicely done. And there's Final Fantasy XV. Sorry for the anticlimax, but I haven't played it. It's something on my list for next year. And then there's Dark Souls 3. What can I say about it? It's more Dark Souls, like Dark Souls 1, not like Dark Souls 2 Dark Souls, so it feels like real Dark Souls. One day I'll talk about this franchise in depth with a specific language to talk about it in. And lastly, there is Bravely Second. Technically, I'm only halfway done with it. In my opinion, Second takes everything in default and turns it up to 11. The Final Fantasy V-esque gameplay is made even better with more jobs. The characters are better than the first game, but without abandoning with what I thought the first game did well, which was charm. And that charm is turned up to 100 with you and Magnolia. The plot is a little more straightforward, but is played with in kind of a swashbuckling let's go on an adventure style. And as you all know, I really like that kind of thing. I like that feeling of going on an adventure. A lot of the complex moral dilemmas are now put in side quests, which is fine by me since Majora's Mask did that same kind of thing, and that game is amazing. While there was some controversy surrounding them, I ultimately made my peace with it, since it was Square Enix who ultimately thought that certain aspects were done poorly, and it wasn't a localization issue in and of itself. Overall, since I don't want to give any sweeping judgments since I'm only partway through, I wouldn't be surprised if I found this to be my favorite RPG from this year. Overall, I'd say this was a pretty excellent year. Happy New Year everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like what you saw and you want to support my content, please consider supporting me on Patreon or PayPal. Thank you for watching, and God bless you all.